Joining me now, Daniel Turner, Power the Future Executive Director. Daniel, always great to see you. We're having this prolonged conversation about inflation, and I think part of it started with President Biden and his spending plans, the stimulus checks, too much capital, chasing too few goods. But the other part of it started with his energy policies when on day one, he essentially said, big oil, I'm coming after you. And they continue to say that, as you heard Janet Yellen and Hillary's report before. And yet then they stand there and say, oh, well, it's big oil. They're price gouging. That's why gas is $4.37. No, they're not price gouging, Daniel. They're actually not investing because you're saying you're broadcasting, you're going to shut them down.
They're not investing, and we have this enormous shortage of fossil fuels, which is driving up prices. You know, it was interesting to see the Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, not reply to Hillary Vaughn's questions and say, I'm not taking questions. This is a woman who just said before Congress that we need to stop using fossil fuels. Well, why are food prices so high, and why is there a food shortage? Because fertilizers and pesticides and potash and nitrates come from fossil fuels. So we are saying to the American people, we're going to get rid of fossil fuels and go to wind and solar. But what about food prices? What about farm prices? What about consumer good prices? Rubber, plastic, all of these goods that come from fossil fuels. We're ignoring the fact that we are crippling our economy because people like Janet Yellen are dumb. And I apologize for the harsh language, but they don't understand what they are doing to the economy. So she says, well, we're not going to use fossil fuels. Great. And when we go hungry this year, what's the response going to be? The last segment, we're not going to use fossil fuels. When we go dark, and look, it's not dark in a cute idea like we're in a movie theater. It's your dialysis machine was turned off, right? You're freezing to death.
Yeah.
You're dying of the elements if we go dark. Who's running our country, Jackie? You
know, to your point, I used to say all the time that I thought Yellen and Biden and the whole administration, that they're all dumb when it comes to these policies, Daniel. But, Larry Kudlow set me straight. He said they're not dumb. They know exactly what they're doing. They just don't care. They are pushing their green agenda at any cost. They do not care how it impacts every average American in this country. And they are going to get what they want when they send gas to $4.37 and everybody turns around and says, oh, well, maybe I should get an electric car next time. That's exactly what they want.
Well, and that's what's so frustrating is that, look, everyone has an agenda. Everyone is politically motivated, especially in this city. But when you are punishing your people, when the president is allowed, I'm sorry there's no baby formula. Not my problem, right? This is what I want to accomplish. I'm sorry that you can't afford your utilities or you can't afford to drive your car. I have an agenda. When you have an administration that is punishing its people, crippling its people because they care more about an ideology, then we don't have a country anymore. And that's exactly where we're headed. So I agree with Mr. Kudlow. They know what they're doing. But boy, do they really have such hatred for the American people that they'll leave them to suffer? And the answer is yes. Quite frankly, they do.
Final point that I want to make here to Jeff Flock's report regarding, shutting down all these other power sources right now because they're considered, bad forms of energy because anything that isn't green energy isn't working. What you do is you leave yourself as a country. The country remains vulnerable because you have situations like what we saw down in Texas when the alternative energy isn't working and the grid fails and you don't have backup sources of power. People were left in extreme temperatures that they were experiencing. And they were left without energy sources. And that's essentially, they keep pushing that forward, not thinking what will happen in case of an emergency. And that's what he's saying this summer. It gets really hot in July. And where are we going to get the energy?
And we can see this happening, right? This is foreshadowing what is going to happen. So we could prevent it if we had the political will. We've played these wind and solar games for decades, and it's unfortunate they don't work. Right? What does work is fossil fuels. But to prove the point that they want this green agenda so much, they are willing to let the American people suffer. And you know who's going to suffer this summer? Nameless, voiceless, powerless, faceless people. Right? They're the ones that are going to go dark. It's not going to be the Upper East Side of Manhattan. It's not going to be Malibu. Wealthy neighborhoods, the elites are fine. powerless, voiceless average Americans are the ones just like the 246 who died in Texas, and we can't mention one of their names, and no one's going to build them a statue. No one's going to protest in their defense. That's who's going to die this summer. And we can see it happening. We could stop it. Joe Biden could stop it, but he doesn't care. Just like he doesn't care about babies that can't find formula.
Yeah,
it's devastating.
It's really unfortunate. And to listen to him today, bungle his speech and not come up with any answers for the American people, just really, really difficult to stomach. Daniel Turner, good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie.